All right, Bill's story, page 3, bottom of the page. In 1929, I contracted Gulf fever. We went at once to the country, my wife to applaud while I started out to overtake Walter Hagen. Liquor caught up with me much faster than I came up behind Walter. I began to be jittery in the morning. Golf permitted drinking every day and every night. It was fun to caroom around the exclusive courts which had inspired awe in me as a lad. I acquired the impeccable coat of tan one sees upon the well-to-do. The local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism. Abruptly, in October 1929, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. After one of those days of inferno, I wobbled from a hotel bar to a brokerage office. It was 8 o'clock, 5 hours after the market closed. The ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of tape which bore the inscription XYZ minus 32. It had been 52 that morning. I was finished, and so were many friends. The papers reported men jumping to death from the towers of high finance. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. My friends had dropped several million since 10 o'clock. So what? Tomorrow was another day. As I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. The next morning I telephoned a friend in Montreal. He had plenty of money left and thought I had better go to Canada. By the following spring we were living in our accustomed style. I felt like Napoleon returning from Elba. No St. Helena for me. But drinking caught up with me again, and my generous friend had to let me go. This time we stayed broke. We went to live with my wife's parents. I found a job, then lost it as a result of the brawl with a taxi driver. Mercifully, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years, or hardly draw a sober breath. My wife began to work in a department store, coming home exhausted to find me drunk. All right, so lots on that page. So yes, he contracts golf fever. So he's like, "Come on, Lois, let's go." Off we go to become a golf superstar. And she's like, "All right, honey, here I come. I'm gonna cheer you on." Doting with him and obviously keeping a good eye on him because she knew how he could get. And it shows that worship, right? That worship of success that he had, where he had such awe in as a lad, and he wanted that coat that he saw those men have. And the New York Stock Exchange part where the stocks go to hell. I love when he says, "I would not jump." He went back to the bar. It shows a little bit of his ego, but it also shows a little bit of faith in that paragraph where he says that old fierce determination to win came back. So his ego and his faith was there, a little misguided and misdirected at himself. And then, of course, the change of scenery. Let's go to Montreal. I got a friend up there. Let's change scenery, and we can, do it there, and we're going to come back, and it's going to be great. So he's got this, this fire, this zest, and he's always got this new trick in his pocket. I've got this on my sleeve next. Dottie, what do you have to add?
Hi, Dottie Alcoholic. I am so bummed that I missed Wednesday. I was listening to it, and I'm like, Kim's like, "Does anybody else?" And I'm raising my coming. So when me and my sponsor was doing Bill's story, I had to mark down where I saw the unmanageability, and oh my God, I just drew a blank. Oh boy. I'll tell you, and the progression started. Sorry about that. So I can't go back, but I will do it here. That line where he said, "I went back to the bar," that was Bill's solution to the problem of that day, and I was the same way. If there was a problem at work or there was a problem just in general, I went to the bottle because that was my solution to cure whatever that problem was at the moment. So that was, Bill's solution to the stock market. Like it was going to solve everything the next day. And then down here on the last paragraph of page 4, it says, we went to live with my wife's parents. I have that underlined. And then he had a brawl with the taxi driver. Both were considered the unmanageability, right? He's living in a situation he could no longer, provide for his wife, so they had to go live off off of her parents, and then just losing control of himself and having fights with poor, unexpected people that which caused him to lose his job. So that's 2 parts of his unmanageability, and where it was also showing when. And once they had to go live with his wife's parents, it showed that the progression was starting to become stronger and stronger. So that's all I have on that page.
Thank you, Dottie. Charlene.
What I noticed in this part of the story is the glorification of this part of his life. Golf fever, the impeccable coat of tan. That he didn't jump, he just went back to the bar. It seems to me like he's always, he's noticing that alcohol is like the progression, like Dottie said, he's noticing that alcohol is becoming a problem, but there's a way out. I went to Canada, this guy had money. It's like he's noticing, but I'm still making excuses for myself. I'm still kind of glorified in what I'm doing. I find that interesting, and I like this part of the story for that reason, because I can relate.
Right, and that statement, like we were living in our accustomed style, right?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Marianne.
Marianne, alcoholic. I was that part where he was thought the jumping from the towers was something that disgusted him, and he would not jump. The part about it disgusted him, it completely is devoid of any empathy or feeling for his fellow sufferers, in that stock market crash. It was all about him. It was all about denial of his situation, denial in life, denial of his drinking, denial of, how he compensated for, hurdles in life. And that I could identify with myself. I always tried to block out the reality and create the reality I really wanted. And, it worked once in a while, but not in the long term, especially not in terms of how much I was using drinking to invent reality. It's just the denial of how you live your life is just stunning here. I mean, people were jumping, and he clearly couldn't relate to it at all. It didn't matter to him. And God bless Lois. I mean, I think I might have divorced him 2 pages ago, but she's still there. So, but he's really down on a downward progression at this point. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I probably would have left him too. Irene.
The part that stuck out to me was his self had come home exhausted, and he would still just be drunk every time. And not only was he not facing his responsibilities and putting more on her, but then she had to come home and take care of him and do everything else too. And that's a huge part of my disease is the selfishness. And that's all I wanted to share.
Right, because remember, she left her job on the previous pages, and now here she's taking a lesser job because everything's falling to heck. Kelowna.
Yeah, aloha everybody. What jumped out at me right away was the geographicals that he's taking or starting to take, trying to run away from his problems. So that's something I can relate to. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nicole K. Susan T.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Susan, and I'm an alcoholic. I could totally relate with this page, man. It was like, I remember being into trouble up to my neck, and not knowing how I was going to figure it out, and nobody liked me, and pressure was come on me, and then I would go and I would drink, right? And once I drank, it all went away. I went, what was I so worried about, man? What? You know what? All I got to do is do this, this, and this. That's all I got to do. And that pressure that I was feeling and everything would go away, man. With my second beer, I would be okay, right? And when here he's saying to, I'll show them again, and I've learned that no Saint Helena for me is I have down there. That would be in the store selling cold cuts. And also, here we are in the game again, right? I don't know of any people that are alcoholics like me where I could have absolutely nothing left. I'm in the ditch, and I've got nothing. Family's gone, everything's gone. And if somebody came and looked at me, I would say, you know what? Probably looking around going, hey, who's cutting the grass here? Man, you know what? They're not doing a good job. There's just something about this illness that is, in which, turns people off or is misunderstood in that way of that ego. And I just could not say I was down. I could not say, uncle, I'm going to, you know what? I cannot not drink again. Right? So he's in the game. So now he's, when he puts the alcohol down, or if he ever does, right, he has no spiritual connection, so he's right back at her, right? So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Wendy?
Hey, I'm so glad we're reading this. I've read this story a million times, but have never seen myself in it like I am now. Just really, I thought when things were bad and I had those great ideas, I thought that was good. I mean, I just thought, I was this kind of person that could always come up with a new way. Of course, it didn't really last. But especially when I was, full of substance, then I had really great plans. Like, I'm a great planner. I have lots of ideas. I don't always follow through on them. But it's just interesting to see all this ego and denial. And I don't know. It's just, it's coming to life for me in a totally different way than any other time. When I looked at this, I think it's writing all over my book. It's amazing. So I appreciate you guys being here, and it's great to see all of this that he's going through, and I can, even though completely different circumstances, but oh my gosh, the same exact head is what it feels like to me. So thanks.
Thank you, Wendy. All right, a couple more on this page, and we'll move on. Susan M.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Alcoholic, and I just have something short. It said, papers reported men jumping to death from the towers of high finance. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. To me, it's the same thing, only it's probably a slower death with the alcohol, but it's the same thing to me. And, I don't know why it would disgust him, because maybe people were disgusted at him being an alcoholic, as you can see in the next paragraph. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Yeah, he definitely didn't realize it was the same at all. Marie?
Hi, I'm Marie. I'm an alcoholic. I love this sentence here that says, as I drank, an old fierce determination to win came back. And, I can so relate to that. The more and more I drank, the more I felt powerful, that I was unstoppable. I could do anything. I can win this or succeed in this or buy this or do that, but when it came down to reality, the more and more that I continued to drink, the less and less I did. So I just like that sentence. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Grace?
Yes, hi, I'm Grace. I'm an alcoholic. The sentence that really struck me was
as I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. And I remember, whenever I felt any darkness or I felt down or something was really going on, as soon as I had that second martini, it was like everything, the lights just all turned on. All of a sudden I became optimistic. I could do this, I could do that. I thought my creativity was now turned on, and I would wallow in that misconception that I could just now conquer everything that I was having a problem with until that wore off, and then all the problems were back the next day. But that lasted for me for quite a while, where I would drink and then be on top of the world as soon as that got into me and feel it, and I'm like, oh, that's great. I don't know what I was thinking about before, because things had never got bad, until it wore off and I had to get up the next morning and everything was still sitting in front of me. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Grace. Joanne, last one on this page.
Okay, so what I see in this story is the progression of what I hear in the program as alcohol being false courage. He got through. He was lonely. He had a drink. He wasn't lonely anymore. He went to war. War is hard to deal with. People drink. He had his answer to get through life when he was scared, when he was overwhelmed, and that alcohol was his courage medicine. But the price he paid for that was numbness. So when he saw the people jump off the building, of course he was like judgmental. How could they? Because he's not really allowed himself to feel fear. He's just been numb for a long time. And that's what alcoholism does. But eventually it keeps you from feeling what your life is about, but then it takes your life. That's it.
Thank you. Love that. All right, moving on to page 5. I became an unwelcome hanger-on at brokerage places. Liquor ceased to be a luxury. It became a necessity. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day, and often 3, got to be routine. Sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s, and I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens. This went on endlessly, and I began to waken very early in the morning, shaking violently. A tumbler full of gin, followed by a half-dozen bottles of beer, would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation, and there were periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hopes. Gradually, things got worse. The house was taken over by the mortgage holder. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father-in-law became ill. Then I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at a low point of 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and the chance vanished. I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink. I was through forever. Before then, I had written lots of sweet promises, but my wife and I happily observed that this time I meant business, and so I did. Shortly afterwards, I came home drunk. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know. I hadn't even come to mind. Someone had pushed a drink my way, and I had taken it. Was I crazy? I began to wonder, for such an appalling lack of perspective seemed near being just that. So here he's getting into it where now he's realizing that there is a problem and he can't stop drinking. He's saying, nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation. So that's alcoholic obsessive thinking, where I can control this. It's okay. It's not that bad. And then, how many times have we said, I am never, ever going to drink again. Never, ever, ever. I'm never going to drink again, ever. And yet there we were drinking again. sweet promises and no sweet promises. There I was, drinking again and again. Dottie.
Hi, Dottie, alcoholic. I have a lot on this page of, the unmanageability and the progress. Like, liquor ceased to be a luxury. That's where the progress started taking over. He's up to 2 bottles a day and, sometimes 3. I remember that myself. And then he wasn't eating, so that was the unmanageability of his progression. And at the end of that paragraph, it gives that false hope to his wife, and that's where Dr. Silkworth explained, the alcoholic can't differentiate the truth from the false, and Bill still thinks he can control his drinking. And then when it goes down to the paragraph where then I got a promising business opportunity, he didn't drink that whole time. And during this time, it was also prohibition. So the liquor that was around, it was illegal liquor per se. And one of the guys he was working with on this project offered him some Applejack. And Applejack was also called Jersey Lightning, so it was like a high class moonshine per se, and he turned it down, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, he had some, and he drank it, and he had the remorse, which is now more progress, and and it's also at the end of that. What did I have here? I can't remember my handwriting sometimes. It was showing the difference between a normal drinker and us. Like, a normal drinker would drink, and after puking their brains out 3 times, they'd say, "Oh, this isn't for me." But us alcoholics, we would go drink again and again to prove that we could continue to drink with no problem. And well, it was a problem, because that was our disease telling us we got this. And finally, that last paragraph of his progression, it's kind of like the first time he really sees that he is powerless over the drink, and and now he's questioning his sanity. And I identified with a whole lot on this page, and it's just I'm glad I understood this page once I went through it with my sponsor. That's all I have.
Oh, yes, I see myself on the second half of this page glaring at me. Vanessa W.
Vanessa, I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, I kind of saw the same thing as Dottie, but it reminded me when he talked about the prodigious bender, about how many times I drank at the worst time. If there was something important coming up, whether it was a visit or a test or an exam or a job interview, always, the night before, that would be the night that I would decide that I was going to go on a bender. So that is something I found I had in common with Bill W. And also, just the insanity. I think that's where he, moving step 1 and step 2, and he starts to realize that there is some insanity involved with just doing these things. The day after, again, having done something. So thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got insanity in big letters at the bottom of that page. Bev.
Hi, guys. Bev, alcoholic here. So what hit me really hard was all the way at the bottom of the page, where had been my high resolve. I simply did not know. It hadn't even come to mind. Someone had pushed a drink my way, and I had taken it. Was I crazy? Well, I had 3 years of no drinking at one point, and it was the 4th of July. It was 98 degrees. It was hot as heck. I was with someone. I was on vacation. I had a ginger ale in my hand. She had a Coors Light in her hand, and she said, "You haven't had a drink in 3 years. Can't you just have one beer with me? It's the 4th of July." Well, she had no idea what that meant. And I had been slowly moving myself on the outskirts of the program. I'd all but stopped going to meetings. I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't working the steps. But there's a place in the big book that says that we have no can't think of the exact words of it. Anyway, we have no resolve or no defense against the birch drink, and we don't even know why. And that's because we're hardwired different than everybody else. It's because we're alcoholics. That's what we do. We take the drink. And what everybody else said about the progression, it shows a little bit more on each page. It's like what's left, like I lost the house, I lost the car, I lost the wife, I lost the this. Well, he's starting to lose things and realize that there is a big problem. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out. Thanks.
Thanks, Bev. Valerie.
Hi, I'm Valerie. I'm an alcoholic. I was just going to comment on page 5 where I woke up, this had to be stopped. I said that one time. And when I read this in the book, I wrote it in my book. I said this exact thing. This has got to stop. And I've gone to some meetings where some people have said, this is step 0 when you say this has got to stop. And I related to what the last speaker said about I didn't drink for a whole month, and a friend of mine said it's been a month, not years, but it's been a month. Surely you can have a drink now. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. So I did, and then continued to drink for a long time after that. So anyway, that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you. My girlfriends took me to Palm Springs for my 1 year for a reset weekend. That's how little they knew. I did not drink, thank goodness. Charlene.
So I just kind of highlighted it along the way, and it's so it tells my story. You know, liquor ceased to be a luxury; it became a necessity. This went on endlessly. I still thought I could control the situation. I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink. Shortly afterward, I came home drunk. Someone had pushed me a drink my way, and I had taken it. Was I crazy? This to me, just reminds me of the relapses that I had, and that I knew that I could not control it, but I had no way out of it. And the one thing that really stood out to me was the boundaries we have to set for ourselves. They are so necessary, and that was one thing that I didn't recognize was what are my boundaries. First of all, I know other people call them triggers. It's like, what can I do, what can't I do? And I had to stop hanging out with a lot of people, and I had to stop going to bars and all these things that I loved so much that I thought I could do, that I thought I could control. Well, it turns out that I couldn't, and I can't. And so again, just the validity of that in his story is great. And I also wrote insanity at the top of my page.
Thank you, Charlene. Last one on this page, Marianne from Long Island.
Hi. Right here when it says, then I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at a low point. And, he said, he's like, oh, now I can do something. And I can rebuild myself, and I have my friends. And then, because he was like, all right, I'm sober, I can do this. And then he went on a bender. And at that point, even for me, like at that point, he was just like, everything just went out the window because he started drinking again. So, his best laid plans of mice and men didn't work out too well for him. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Renewing my resolve, I tried again. Some time passed and confidence began to be replaced by cocksuredness. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. One day I walked into a cafe to telephone. In no time, I was beating on the bar, asking myself how it happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I would manage better next time, but I might as well get good and drunk then, and I did. The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. The courage to do battle was not there. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. I hardly dared cross the street lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it was scarcely daylight. An all-night place supplied me with a dozen glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were still at last. A morning paper told me the market had gone to hell again. Well, so had I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. Should I kill myself? No, not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that. So 2 bottles and oblivion. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms, for mine endured this agony 2 more years. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when the morning terror and madness were on me. Again I swayed dizzily before an open window, or the medicine cabinet where there was poison. Cursing myself for a weakling, there were flights from city to country and back as my wife and I sought escape. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture was so hellish I feared I would burst through my window, sash and all. Somehow I managed to drag my mattress to a lower floor, lest I suddenly leapt. A doctor came with a heady sedative. The next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. People feared for my sanity. So did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking, and I was 40 pounds underweight. So here he's getting really, really bad. So in that first paragraph, he's got his first solution. So Bill tries 3 solutions in the next few pages to solve his alcoholic problem. The first being self-will. So he renewed his resolve, and he tried again to quit based on self-will. But it didn't work, and he found himself in this horrible 2-year relapse, and just the description of the horror and the feelings of hopelessness the next day. I mean, I can relate to that 100%. And then I know you guys are going to talk about it, but that unmanageability, right? Like he's getting to the worst of the worst. Anyone want to discuss this page? Joanne.
Yeah, so I underlined the courage to do battle was not there, and I could relate to that. I started drinking when I was 11, and I got sober at 23. But my answer to my fear about being sober, well, my answer to life was that false courage was drinking and drugging. So I couldn't allow myself to feel how scared I was. And it became really obvious when I got sober, because my first year, I would say to myself, if this doesn't work, I'll just kill myself. I mean, it never dawned on me like I could ask for help, I could do all this extra stuff. It was my fear, because I didn't have the courage to do battle. I didn't have that belief that a power greater than myself could help me walk through what I was about to walk through. That higher power, I asked for higher power to give me that courage. And then later on he restates it again, no, now, not now. And then he says, gin would fix that. It's again, his higher power, and what kills the fear is the booze. And today I stay sober because booze and drugs are no longer my higher power. And my higher power gives me courage to keep battling. That's right. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's that solution. The solution has to be there, and the alcohol is the solution, or the whatever substance you use is the solution. And then he tried self-will as the solution. It didn't work, so back he went to the solution he knew worked, which was alcohol. The user named iPhone, I think you're wearing a white sweater.
Oh, okay. Hi. So,
you're good.
Name's Annette, and I'm alcoholic. Thank you. And right before the last thing, it shows you about the physical addiction and dependence about being on the drink. I can remember many times the saying, taking a drink like the dog that bit you type of thing. And I can also, I can relate to this about not knowing that alcohol was the problem. Like it was other things around me that I thought, that's why I drank, just to feel normal, to fit in. It was like just very, like couldn't wait to get old enough to take the drink, not really realizing now the first time I did drink I had an allergic reaction to it. So it's that, for me anyway, and also I had an injury due to drinking and driving, and I had stopped drinking, and then of course the doctor stepped in where I was given sedatives and stuff to help with my pain, and I did that for 10 years not drinking, but I didn't have AA in my life. And then once I mixed the drinking with the drug, I was like, at first I felt like this is the solution now, just do both. It's like, oh, don't take your medicine with alcohol. Oh yeah, then I'll take two. It's just so bizarre how I rationalize my drinking. Like if you were in this much pain, you would do it too. Even all these years in the proof of my own story, I ended up relapsing again, that controlled drinking. Just having I can have just the one drink, because I knew that ease, that comfort that first drink would bring me. Fortunately, there were no consequences at that time, but again, I have a insane short memory, the ism of the alcoholism. Like I forget the bad stuff, I glorify the good stuff, the good times. I don't, just hop out of the car and run down. Yeah, I'm good. I didn't get hurt. Oh, did I hurt anybody up? Like, no compassion, just being selfish about, okay, got myself out of another scrape. And thank God I never did hurt anyone, because there's many women, I'm sure, in prison or like just living with that guilt. And I don't want to do that. But I had done it. That's the insanity of it, the self-will run riot, So thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Annette. Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth, alcoholic. This reading just reminds me of just how awful this disease is at the end before you get into the roots. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture was so hellish, I feared I would burst through my window, sash and all. Somehow I managed to drag my mattress to a lower floor, lest I suddenly leave. I just remember just being in just a horrible place, for a period of years where I just couldn't live with it, couldn't live without it. And it was like every other weekend I would find myself just in this awful place where I would be outside, like, smoking cigarettes and drinking so much and just so messed up. I would just be like, why can't I stop? Why can't I stop? And having that will to live, which Bill definitely had the will to live, but just being in that place of calamity and not being able to stop. It is horrible, horrible place to be in. And it's important to read this story, because I think, how Bill was at the end. None of us can ever forget how bad it was, and how lucky we are to not be in that situation right now. So, I'm grateful to be a recovering alcoholic and not be back in that horrible place. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good remember our last drink. Eileen, New York.
Hi, I'm Eileen. I'm an alcoholic. What I wanted to say is that, what we were just talking about, how he was afraid that he was going to jump, and just the page before, he said that it was that disgusting him watching everyone jump out of the high towers of finance. And the progression of disease is like the lower we go down in the scale, the more that we find acceptable. And the more I know, if I pick up a drink again, I'm going to go down further and further, and those not yets are going to happen. I just felt that I want to share that part. Thanks.
Right, and going further and further down, it's also mentioning that he's stealing from his wife at this point, so he's doing things he never thought he would do. And just a quick note, it was actually Lois that helped him drag that mattress to the lower floor, because he was too drunk to get it down the stairs or whatever. Michelle O.
Hi friends, my name is Michelle. I'm an alcoholic. This just reminds me, I lived this page. I had about 6 years, 1998, I had a couple years sober, and, I wanted to try again. And I was in so much pain after almost 8 years of sobriety that, they were offering free drinks, and I decided to pick up a drink. And that was that. I had no more courage to do battle because I thought, I had 8 years. How could I screw that up? How could I mess that up? And so I didn't even care anymore, and it took me 2 years, like it did Bill. It took me 2 years to get back. And it wasn't me that brought me back. It was God. It was my higher power that brought me back, because I had no desire to be back. I thought I could not be honest. But this whole page is just, picking up that drink, that remorse, that I was so ashamed. I thought, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to go out and never mind. I'm not coming back into the program. And, it just, I could really relate to this page. Relapse is not a prerequisite, but it just happened for me. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Dottie. Oh, sorry.
All righty. So, his progression is getting more and more, and the unmanageability is getting even worse, right? Like Kim mentioned, he's stealing from his wife, and just everything's getting out of control. But the part on this page itself I identify with the most is, should I kill myself? No, not now. I prayed every night, not that I believed in a God by the time I was to my blackout drinking and daily drinking, because I was just so angry with him. But I would pray every night not to wake up, because I wouldn't kill myself, because, I lost a brother to suicide. He was addicted to cocaine, and he committed suicide. And when I was in my act of drinking, I thought him as a coward for doing so, but because I didn't know, right? I didn't know what I know now. So, but I didn't want to be that way. And, and there was a part of me that didn't want to put my family through all of that, but I did pray to not wake up every night or every morning, however it be. So I was able to identify this, his progression's taken him to, he wanted to die, but he didn't want to die. It was just, now I'm starting to question, his willpower, his sanity, and, and I did the same thing, I didn't realize that as much as I was drinking that it was a problem, but I was starting to question some of the things that I remembered doing and like why I was doing those things. But, once I became that continuous blackout drinker, I didn't remember anything I was doing, so I didn't know if it was right, wrong, indifferent, or and I'm kind of grateful today that I don't remember those things. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Dottie. Marianne.
Oh, hi, Marianne. Alcoholic again. Just I wanted to share on that bottom of the prior page where it said he picked up a drink, and it said it hadn't even come to mind. Someone just pushed a drink my way and I'd taken it. And was I crazy? And, I came into this program in 86. So it's been a while. And every year, in the beginning, it was on every anniversary, I had a drunk dream. And it was always that dream. That's exactly what my dream was. Someone just pushed something my way and I picked it up, didn't think about it. And, remorse. And I used to wake up in bed with a cold sweat and look around and reassure myself I had gone nowhere and I had done nothing and I was okay. And I always share those because otherwise they plague me. But after all these years, I still maybe once a year have that same stupid dream. And I have to keep reminding myself that people who aren't alcoholics don't do that. So it's just one more reminder that I can't go near alcohol no matter how long I have in the program. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Marianne. Connie M.
Connie M., that's me.
That is.
My name's Connie. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much for chairing this meeting. I'm loving getting with some good information. I usually go over this with a sponsee and there's no information coming back. So I'm getting more information. I thank you so much for being here. The thing for me that's coming to mind is when, identifying this book to my
I didn't go to these extents that this guy did, this Bill did, but, when he wakes up with that resolve and, now I'm done. And the gift was that the tool of having a sponsor to go through this, to say, this isn't just a story about Bill. This is possibly your story too, in some ways, and let's investigate that. And that was such a gift, and it still is, because when I look at that family illness, he's in the house, he's losing jobs, his mother-in-law gets sick, his wife is getting, this alcoholism and any of this stuff causes so much stress in our families and to ourselves that, sometimes we don't see that. And that helped me to see that with my sponsor, to see the chaos that is in my family from alcoholism, that resolve, and you get your hopes up for somebody, they're going to get recovery, and then they lose it, and you lose all hope. But what I got in the doors was hope that I'm not alone. That, it doesn't matter how far the scale down you go. It doesn't matter if you've lost your job or where you are. If you decide that you think that you're an alcoholic, this could be a place for you to solve that problem. Because the problem isn't the drinking for me. The problem is the thinking and living in my ideas and emotions at this point. At first, it was about the drinking. So when somebody pushed a little, what are they called, flask my way, here, have just a little hit, playing golf. I love the golf thing. I'm all into golf, and man, that's fun. Have a little chill off when I'm playing some activities. I'm athletic, but I'm not great. But then I don't care. I'm just having fun when I drink and play sports and stuff. So drinking and golfing, and of course hitting the restaurant afterwards and ordering the 2 big pitchers. My friends were just going to have a glass, but I'm having 2 big pitchers with them. But I'll drink less. So just all that stuff that my sponsor helped me to remember. Help me to go over, help me to review, could this be you? Is this your story in some way? Do you see the difference? Do you see the similarities? And that was huge because I read the book, I kind of, okay, I get it. This is about him and this, but when I could identify it to me, that's what this book does and all of your sharing. So thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Heidi G.
Yeah. Hi. Heidi, I'm an alcoholic. What really stuck out, what's been coming to me, is the part where he says, my mind raced uncontrollably, and there's a terrible sense of impending calamity. And I feel like there's so much to be related to there with, like, the panic. And there was, in my sense, this last time around, definitely a huge emotional bottom where, the constant kind of crazy fear of even leaving the house. There was all sorts of stories I started to create as far as, like, I was going to die. Like, if I went out, not that I was going to kill myself, but that for some reason, like, I was going to die. Either God was going to punish me or something, just was impending calamity is huge there. And was a huge part of what just really kept me drinking, because that took away that fear. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like, that was the way God's first, real pull at me, my higher power saying, you're going the wrong way, turn around. And I don't know if that's more of a spiritual thing or a physiological thing. I'm still just kind of learning all this, but yeah, thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Heidi. One more on this page. Sorry, ladies. Gabrielle? Gabby?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. There we go.
There we go. So this I could so relate to. I remember even reading through that, I remembered the feelings of how I felt back then. It's like I felt it physically almost inside of me when we were reading it. And I remember being at that place where I felt that way that Bill describes, and not knowing that there was anything I could do to get myself out of it. Because I had tried the not drinking. I tried quitting drinking. I never did anything as a substitute, but I just tried to stop. And the feelings that he described were so much worse for me. You know, it's like my anxiety got so much worse, my depression got so much worse, those racing thoughts just increased tenfold. But I did nothing besides trying to just stop drinking. So you take the alcohol away from a suffering alcoholic and you get nowhere good unless you have a solution to the problem, right? And so I really felt like my only options in life were either to continue drinking and get a little bit of relief from time to time, to stop drinking and basically want to kill myself every day because I was so miserable. Or, you know, like that was it. Like I felt like I only had like two options. I didn't know that I had this other option that I've gotten through Alcoholics Anonymous, that I can be sober. I can be living in this world with other people and actually have that ease and comfort, like all the promises that have come true. I didn't know that that was a possibility for me. So that terrible dilemma that he describes, I can just relate to that. I'm just so grateful that there was a third option for me, you know, that I was able to go through the steps and not have to suffer the way that he describes. Because, man, that brings it all back. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on, finish up today's session. My brother-in-law is a physician, and through his kindness and that of my mother, I was placed in a nationally known hospital for the mental and rehabilitation of alcoholics. Under the so-called Belladonna Treatment, my brain cleared. Hydrotherapy and mild exercise helped much. Best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally. It relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics the will was amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. Understanding myself now, I fared forth in high hope. For 3 or 4 months, the goose hung high. I went to town regularly and even made a little money. Surely this was the answer, self-knowledge. But it was not, for that frightful day came when I drank once more. The curve of my declining moral and bodily health fell off like a ski jump. After a time, I returned to the hospital. This was the finish, the curtain, it seemed for me. To my weary and despairing wife was informed that it would all end with heart failures during delirium tremens, or I would develop a wet brain, perhaps within a year. She would soon have to give me over to the undertaker or the asylum. They did not need to tell me. I knew and almost welcomed the idea. It was a devastating blow to my pride. I, who had thought so well of myself and of my abilities, of my capacity to surmount obstacles, was cornered at last. Now I was to plunge into the dark, joining that endless procession of sots who had gone on before. I thought of my poor wife. There had been much happiness after all. What would I not give to make amends? But that was over now. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. Trembling, I stepped from the hospital a broken man. Fear sobered me a bit. Then came the insidious insanity of that first drink, and on Armistice Day, 1934, I was off again. Everyone became resigned to the certainty that I would have to be shut up somewhere or would stumble along to a miserable end. How dark it is before the dawn. In reality, that was the beginning of my last debauch. I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. So on those pages, which I think brings us to a good place to end today, he talks about getting into Towns Hospital. He gets introduced to Dr. Silkworth. He goes through a bit of a detox, and he learns about alcoholism and its symptoms. And he's armed with this new solution number 2, self-knowledge. And he's going to go out, and self-knowledge is the answer. All is going to be great. And then once again, he finds himself drinking. And his moral and physical decline is just so great. You know, he had already mentioned stealing from his wife, so now he must be doing more things that were immoral to him. And then, of course, he finds his second or third final solution there before he finds what we all know now is the solution. And so the third one there is fear. So fear sobered him again. So I always like to remind people of those three solutions that Bill tried in his story: self-will, self-knowledge, and fear. Those are the three solutions that, you know, I've tried myself, and I know lots of other people have tried and failed at. So let's open up Flo. Oh, you got to hit. There you go.
Hi, I'm Flo. I'm an alcoholic. I just always felt that this is the best step one I've ever heard. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my match. And I've always thought, I've never heard a better step one than that degree of powerlessness. And at one point in my life, I was there. And I think that was the first thing in Bill's story that I actually related to, because most of the time I looked at the differences of him and myself, and it took me a long time to clue into the fact that there were a lot of similarities, like wanting to kill myself. I don't know how many times I drove towards a bridge with a cement pillar, trying to point my car towards it, and at the last minute veered away. So glad to be here, and this is a great meeting. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Flo. Susan. You got to hit your side on mute. There you go.
Hi, everybody. My name is Susan, and I am Power Over Alcohol. And this chapter, this reading just jumped off the page at me. I can relate to it so much. I was rapid advance. I was able to get to the party, but I came to the top of the heap in no time at all. And I can remember Adele was sharing the anxiety that came with drinking. And the physical that were obvious and that part that were in delay. And I can remember going to my daughter's office and come back. I was head of the hospital, and but I thought, no, I need to get in the hospital, get up, and get myself all fixed up. I'll be good in no time. And it was there I really got, some physical relief as well as some mental relief. So I can relate where you start off and you go in and you're getting that the relief for your physically ailing day from the alcohol abuse. And then they realize that there is a mental health issue. And that was the first time that I had been actually diagnosed with something called concurrent disorder, where you have an addiction running concurrent to your alcoholism or addiction. And that was a big eye-opener for me. And it really made me aware that, you know what, I come from an alcoholic family, and it made me understand a lot of the history of what my father had gone through. So just like Bill explained there, when I got out, I had a new lease on life. I was going to really make a go of it, but I had not been connected to AA at that time, and I didn't think I needed it. And so it was only a short time after that I started drinking again on self-will, but thinking that it was something that now, with all the self-knowledge, I could stop. So I really, really appreciate these meetings and everyone shares. Thank you, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Susan. Dottie.
You always catch me when I'm typing in the chat. Dottie Alcoholic. I have a lot here. It was talking about when his brother-in-law, the physician, got him into Towns Hospital, and that was back in 1993. So that was the first time he was in the hospital for his alcoholism, and and he was detoxed, and he went through it, and the hydrotherapy, which was a water treatment that just doesn't work. All it does is get you wet, more or less. And he talks about the kind doctor that he met, and that's Dr. Silkworth, and that's where, doctor's opinion came to be. But for the self-knowledge, his self-knowledge was three things. It's not the willpower, the moral characteristics and sin, and the physical allergy and the obsession of the mind. And it's more in the paragraph right after that is more and more of the progression and his unmanageability. In 1934, he had his second experience within Towns Hospital. And just, he didn't think he was going to make it. Now he's scaring his wife, he's scaring the doctors because his progression is just getting bad. And I've heard stories within AA of people stopping, and when they go back out and pick back up, it takes them back to where they were, and it's even worse. And now Bill is like hopeless, and he's thinking now without hope, there's no life. But as he continues to just keep working at it, I think who was the first woman to share? She said this is the best first step one that she's ever heard. And it was kind of where this first step came from, because the steps weren't even created yet. And, Bill took step one without a solution, and he surrendered to the alcoholism. And, and it was just simply amazing that, this is where he more or less, which are going to come in the next set of pages, and how, he's just started to, be willing. And that's what I get out of this, is he's starting to be willing to accept that, there's a whole lot of problems going on. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. And just a quick note on what the Belladonna treatment is. That was actually developed by Dr. Charles Towns, who's from the Towns Hospital. And the Belladonna treatment was giving the patient a delirium mixture to make them a little bit delirious, to take away their cravings, and then flushing out their intestines with castor oil. So it's basically a really, really harsh detox. Connie M.
Hi, my name's Connie. I'm an alcoholic. Again, thank you so much for being here. Makes my day. I remember reading the book with my sponsor. Like I said, it was really important to go through this with my sponsor. And we got to there as a solution. She was like so excited. She's like, there's this line that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence. We have not. And I was like, who the hell cares? What are you talking about like that? But so I just go along with, okay, I'm looking for freedom. And she was so excited about this, rocketed into a fourth dimension. I'm thinking like height, weight, depth, water, land, air. I'm thinking, what is this fourth dimension she's talking about? But on this page 8, a couple years later, a sponsee actually is one who brought it out. She said, I found what the fourth dimension. I was like, what are you talking about? And it says down here, I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And the thing is with me, I wake up in this body of mine and my thinking and my ideas, and right away there's fear and worry, and the solution is to, that at once, that peace and comfort that comes at once with that drink, and like to not need that anymore, to know that there's just fear involved here with whatever this decision or this thought or this idea. There's fear. Take a breath. You're protected. You're doing the right thing. You haven't drank. You'll make the right decisions. It's going to be okay. Like just all that self-soothing helps me remember that, no, I'm in a place of happiness, peace, and usefulness. I can work through this. This is life that I can work through, which is before, like with drinking, it's just like I wanted to get away from life. Life was so hard. All the gifts I had, healthy family, great husband, good home, lots of things to do. And yet it was so much work. It was just work. And now it's like, it's my gifts. It's still hard work and stuff, but I have this whole other, like I am happy and I have peace of mind and heart because I do this program with my sponsor and with people I work with and with you guys, each of you. So I just encourage you, if you didn't know what that fourth dimension, it tells me in this book that I'm going to know happiness, peace, and usefulness if I do this program. So anyways, thanks for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. I've taken up residency in the fourth dimension. I like it over here. It's pretty awesome. Kelly D, last one.
Yeah, hi, my name is Kelly. I'm an alcoholic. This is so great. This is my first time on this meeting with you ladies. I have small children, so, I got to get my ducks in a row to get what I need and what lengths will I go to, right? So my thing is here, number one, Dr. Silkworth gave us the first step. Like, he found that we were power. Like, he just, to me, he's just, like, amazing. He for me, I have written in my big book, that we're working with, Towns Hospital and doing what he had to do to try to get on the other side. Like, we all have to go through the experience to figure out how we can do the program, work the program, and get into that fourth dimension that someone was talking about. It just, going it alone is so dangerous for me and what was happening with him and trying to stay sober himself. There was just no human defense, and with respect to the drink of the drug. And then I liked how it says that, with pride, like he was, it was a devastating blow to my pride. Like, my pride will kill me. And we all need to ask for help. And that's really what I wanted to say, is that I have to always ask for help, because my pride and my best thing, like, it will destroy me if I don't say, well, I'm having trouble. I'm not having a good day. I'm really stressed out. So anyway, thank you, ladies. This is awesome. I'm so glad I found you guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Kelly. All right, we're only 7 minutes over. Thank you, ladies, so much. From the next time we see each other, we're going to find out about this fourth dimension of existence and find out how he was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes.